Chapter 15, Rabadash, the Ridiculous. The next turn of the road brought them out from among the trees, and there, across green lawns, sheltered from the north wind by the high wooded ridge at its back, they saw the castle of Anvard. It was very old, and built of a warm, reddish-brown stone. Before they had reached the gate, King Loon came out to meet them, not looking at all like Arvis's idea of a king, and wearing the oldest of his old clothes, for he had just come out from making a round of the kennels with his huntsmen, and had only stopped for a moment to wash his doggy hands. But the bow with which he greeted Arvis as he took her hand would have been stately enough for an emperor. "Little lady," he said, "we bid you very heartily welcome. If my dear wife were still alive, we could make you better cheer, but could not do it with a better will. And I am sorry that you have had misfortunes in being driven from your father's house, which cannot be but a grief to you. My son Kor has told me about your adventures together, and of your valor." "It was he who did all that, sir," said Arvis. "Why, he rushed at a lion to save me." "What's that?" said King Loon, his face brightening. "I hadn't heard that part of the story." Then Arvis told it. And Kor, who had very much wanted the story to be known, though he felt he couldn't tell it himself, didn't enjoy it so much as he had expected, and indeed felt rather foolish. But his father enjoyed it very much indeed, and in the course of the next few weeks told it to so many people that Kor wished it had never happened. Then the king turned to Hwin and Bree and was just as polite to them as to Arvis, and asked them a lot of questions about their families and where they had lived in Narnia before they had been captured. The horses were rather tongue-tied, for they weren't yet used to being talked to as equals by humans. Grown-up humans, that is. They didn't mind Arvis and Kor. Presently, Queen Lucy came out from the castle and joined them, and King Loon said to Arvis, "My dear, here is a loving friend of our house, and she has been seeing that your apartments are put to rights for you better than I could have done it." "You'd like to come see them, wouldn't you?" said Lucy, kissing Arvis. They liked each other at once, and soon went away together to talk about Arvis's bedroom, and Arvis' boudoir, and getting clothes for her, and all the sorts of things girls do talk on such occasions. After lunch, which they had on the terrace, it was cold birds and cold game pie and wine and bread and cheese. King Loon ruffled up his brow and heaved a sigh and said, "Hey, hey, hey, ho! We still have that sorry creature Rabadash on our hands, my friends, and must needs resolve what to do with him." Lucy was sitting on the king's right and Arvis on his left. King Edmund sat at one end of the table, and Lord Darn faced him at the other. Dar and Paradan and Kor and Corn were on the same side as the king. "Your Majesty would have perfect right to strike off his head," said Paradan. "Such an assault as he made puts him on levels with assassins." "It is very true," said Edmund, "but even a traitor may mend. I have known one that did." And he looked very thoughtful as he said that. "To kill this Rabadash would go near raising war with the Tisroc," said Darin. "A fig for the Tisroc," said King Loon. "His strength is in numbers, and numbers will never cross the desert. But I have no stomach for killing men, even traitors, in cold blood. To have cut his throat in battle would have eased my heart mightily, but this is a different thing." "By my counsel," said Lucy, "your Majesty shall give him another trial. Let him go free on straight promise of fair dealing in the future. It may be that he will keep his word." "Maybe apes will grow honest, sister," said Edmund. "But, by the lion, if he breaks it again, may it be in such time and place that any of us could swap off his head in clean battle." "It shall be tried," said the king, and then to one of the attendants, "Send for the prisoner, friend." Rabadash was brought before them in chains. To look at him, anyone would have supposed that he had passed the night in a noisome dungeon without food or water, but in reality he had been shut up in quite a comfortable room and provided with an excellent supper. But as he was sulking far too furiously to touch the supper, and had spent the whole night stamping and roaring and cursing, he naturally did not now look his best. "Your Royal Highness needs not to be told," said King Loon, "that by law of nations as well as by all reason of prudent policy we have a good right to your head as any one mortal man ever had against another. Nevertheless, in consideration of your youth and the ill nature devoid of all gentleness and courtesy which you have doubtless had in the land of slaves and tyrants, we are disposed to set you free, unharmed, on these conditions. First, that—" "Curse you for a barbarian dog!" sputtered Rabadash. "Do you think I will even hear your conditions? Ha! You talk largely of nurture, and I know not what. It's easy to a man in chains. Ha! Take off these vile bonds, give me a sword, and let any of you who dares then debate with me." Nearly all the lords sprang to their feet, and Corin shouted, "Father, can I box him, please?" "Peace, your majesties, my lords," said King Loon. "Have we no more gravity among us than to be so chafed by the taunt of a pajock? Sit down, Corin, or shalt leave the table. I shall ask your highness again to hear our conditions." "I hear of no conditions from barbarians and sorcerers," said Rabadash. "Not one of you dare touch a hair on my head. Every insult you have heaped on me shall be paid with oceans of Narnian and Archenlandish blood. Terrible shall be the vengeance of the Tisrock. Even now, but kill me, and the burnings and torturings in these northern lands shall become a tale to frighten the world 1,000 years hence. Beware! 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 The bolt of Tash falls from above!" Does that bolt ever get caught on a hook halfway?" asked Corin. "Shame, Corin," said the king. "Never taunt a man save when he is stronger than you. Then, as you please." "You foolish Rabadash," sighed Lucy. Next moment, Cor wondered why everyone at the table had risen and standing perfectly still. Of course he did the same himself. And then he saw the reason. Aslan was among them, though no one had seen him coming. Rabadash started at the immense shape of the lion paced softly between him and his accusers. "Rabadash," said Aslan, "take heed. Your doom is very near, but you may still avoid it. Forget your pride. What have you to be proud of? And your anger, for who has done you wrong? Accept the mercy of these good kings." Then Rabadash rolled his eyes and spread out his mouth into a horrible, long, mirthless grin like a shark, wagged his ears up and down. Anyone can learn this if they go to the trouble. He always found this very effective in Calerman. The bravest had trembled when he'd made these faces, and ordinary people had fallen to the floor, and sensitive people had often fainted. But what Rabadash hadn't realized was it's very easy to frighten people who know you can have them boiled alive the moment you give the word. The grimaces didn't look at all alarming in Archenland. Indeed, Lucy thought he was going to be sick. "Demon! Demon! Demon!" shrieked the prince. "I know you! You are the foul fiend of Narnia! You are the enemy of the gods! Learn who I am, horrible phantasm! I am descended from Tash, the inexorable, the irresistible. The curse of Tash is upon you! Lightning in the shape of scorpions shall be rained on you! The mountains of Narnia shall be ground into dust! Have "A care, Rabadash," said Aslan quietly. "The doom is near now. It is at the door. It has lifted the hatch." "Look! The skies fall!" shrieked Rabadash. "Let the earth gape! Let blood and fire obliterate the world! But be sure I will never desist till I have dragged my pals by her hair, the barbarian king, the daughter of dogs, the..." "The hour has struck," said Aslan. And Rabadash saw, to his supreme horror, everyone had begun to laugh. They couldn't help it. Rabadash had been wagging his ears all the time, and as soon as Aslan said, "The hour has struck," the ears began to change. They grew longer and more pointed, and soon were covered with gray hair. And while everyone was wondering where they had seen ears like that before, Rabadash's face began to change too. It grew longer and thicker at the top, and larger-eyed, and the nose sank back into the face, or else the face swelled out to meet it, and it all became nose, and there was hair all over it, and his arms grew longer and came out in front of him till his hands were resting on the ground, only they weren't hands now, they were hoofs. And he was standing on all fours, and his clothes disappeared, and everyone laughed louder and louder because they couldn't help it. For what Rabadash was, simply and unmistakably, was a donkey. The terrible thing was that his human speech lasted just a moment longer than his human shape, so that when he realized the change was coming over him, he screamed, "Oh no! Not a donkey! Mercy! If it were a horse, even a horse! Oh, oh, oh!" And so the words died away into a donkey's bray. "Now hear me, Rabadash," said Aslan. "Justice shall be mixed with mercy. You shall not always be an ass." At this, of course, the donkey twitched its ears forward, and that was also so funny that everyone laughed all the more. They tried not to, but they tried in vain. "You have appealed to Tash," said Aslan, "and in the temple of Tash you shall be healed. You must stand before the altar of Tash in Tashbaan at the great autumn feast this year, and there, in the sight of all Tashbaan, your ass's shape will fall from you, and all men will know you for Prince Rabadash. But as long as you live, if you ever go more than 10 miles away from the great temple in Tashbaan, you shall instantly become again as you are now, and from that second change, there will be no return." And there was a short silence, and then they all stirred and looked at one another as if they were waking from sleep. Aslan was gone, but there was a brightness in the air and on the grass, and joy in their hearts, which assured them that he had been no dream. And anyway, there was a donkey in front of them. King Loon was the kindest-hearted of men, and on seeing his enemy in this regrettable condition, he forgot all his anger. "Your Royal Highness," he said, "I am most truly sorry that these things have come to extremity. Your Highness will bear witness that it was none of our doing. And of course we shall be delighted to provide your Highness with shipping back to Tashbaan for the treatment which Aslan has prescribed. You shall have every comfort which your Highness's situation allows, the best of the cattle boats, the freshest of carrots and thistles." But a deafening bray from the donkey and a well-aimed kick at one of the guards made it clear that these kindly offers were ungratefully received. And here, to get him out of the way, I better finish off the story of Rabadash. He, or it, was duly sent back by boat to Tashbaan and brought to the temple of Tash at the great autumn festival, and then he became a man again. But of course 4,000 or 5,000 people had seen the transformation, and the affair could not possibly be hushed up. And after the old Tisrock's death, when Rabadash became Tisrock in his place, he turned out to be the most peaceable Tisrock Caelerman had ever known. This was because, not daring to go more than 10 miles away from Tashbaan, he could never go on a war himself. And he didn't want his Tarkans to win some fame and war at his expense, for that is the way Tisrocks get overthrown. But though his reasons were selfish, it made things much more comfortable for all the smaller countries round Caelerman. His own people never forgot he'd been a donkey. During his reign, and to his face, he was always called Rabadash the Peacemaker. But after his death, and behind his back, he was always called Rabadash the Ridiculous. And if you look him up in a good history of Caelerman, try your local library, you will find him under that name. And to this day in Caelermene schools, if you do anything unusually stupid, you are likely to be called a second Rabadash. Meanwhile, at Anvard, everyone was very glad that he'd been disposed of before the real fun began, which was a grand feast held that evening on the lawn before the castle, with dozens of lanterns to help the moonlight. And the wine flowed, and the tales were told, and the jokes were cracked, and then silence was made, and the king's poet with 2 fiddlers stepped out into the middle of the circle. Arvis and Cor prepared themselves to be bored, for the only poetry they knew was the Caelermene kind, and you know by now what that was like. But at the very first scrape of the fiddles, a rocket seemed to go up in their heads, and the poets sang the great old lay of fair Olven, and how he fought the giant Pyre and turned him into stone, and how that is the origin of Mount Pyre. It was a 2-headed giant, and won the Lady Liln for his bride, and then it was over, and they wished it would begin again. And though Bree couldn't sing, if he told the story of his fight at Zalindra, and Lucy told again, and they all had, except for Arvis and Cor heard it many times, but they all wanted to hear it again, the tale of the wardrobe, and how she and King Edmund and Queen Susan and Peter the High King had first come to Narnia. And presently, as was certain to happen sooner or later, King Lune said it was time for the young people to be in bed. "And tomorrow, Cor," he added, "shalt come over to the castle with me and see the esters and mark its strength and weaknesses, for it will be thine to guard when I am gone." "But Corin will be king then, father," said Cor. "Nay, lad," said King Lune, "thou art my heir. The crown comes to thee." "But I don't want it," said Cor. "I'd far rather—" "'Tis no question of what thou wantest, Cor, nor I either. 'Tis in the course of law." "But if we're twins, we must be the same age." "Nay," said the king with a laugh, "one must come first. Art Corin's elder by a full 20 minutes. And his better too, let's hope, though that's no great mastery." And he looked at Corin with a twinkle in his eyes. "But father, couldn't you make whichever you like to be the king?" "No. The king's under the law, for it's the law makes him a king. Hast no more power to start away from thy crown than any sentry from his post." "Oh dear," said Cor. "I don't want to at all. And Corin, I'm most dreadfully sorry. I never dreamed my turning up was going to chisel you out of your kingdom." "Ha ha! Hurrah! Hurrah!" said Corin. "I shan't have to be king! I shan't have to be king! I'll always be a prince! Princes have all the fun." "And that's truer than thy brother knows, Cor," said King Lune. "For this is what it means to be a king. To be first in every desperate attack, last in every desperate retreat, and when there's hunger in the land, as must be now and then in bad years, to wear finer clothes and laugh louder over a scantier meal than any man in your land." And when the 2 boys were going upstairs to bed, Cor again asked Corin if nothing could be done about it, and Corin said, "If you say another word about it, I'll knock you down." It would be nice to end the story by saying that after that the two brothers never disagreed about anything ever again, but I'm afraid that would not be true. In reality, they quarreled and fought just as often as any other two boys would, and after all the fights had ended, if they didn't begin, with Kor getting knocked down. For though when they had both grown up and both become swordsmen, Kor was the more dangerous man in battle. Neither he nor anyone else in the North countries could ever equal Corin as a boxer. That was how he got the name of Corin Thunderfist, and how he performed his great exploit against the lapsed bear of Stormness, which was really a talking bear, but had gone back to wild bear habits. Corin climbed up to its lair on the Narnian side of Stormness one winter day when the snow was on the hills, and boxed it, without a timekeeper, for 33 rounds. And at the end of it, couldn't see out of his eyes, and it became a reformed character. Arvis also had many quarrels, and I'm afraid even a few fights, with Kor, but they always made it up again, so that years later, when they were grown up, they were so used to quarreling and making up again that they got married in order to keep on doing it more conveniently. And after King Lun's death, they made a good king and queen of Archenland, and Ram the Great, the most famous of all the kings of Archenland, was their son. Bree and Hwyn lived happily to a great age in Narnia, and both got married, but not to each other. And there weren't many months in which one or both of them didn't come trotting over the pass to visit their friends at Anvard. And that's the end of our chapter. The end of our story, but not the end of our adventures, for there's more still to come.